All right. I am here with Mark Samuel, the founder and CEO of I1 Organics. How's it going, Mark?
Going well, thank you.
Yeah, all right. Let's start with unpacking your background. What got you into business and entrepreneurship?
I started this journey, I guess, 20 years ago. So out of school, I had gotten into real estate finance and had quickly started my own company after learning the ins and outs of that business. And so I've been doing my own thing ever since. Done some service related businesses and some consumer product related businesses.
Nice. Nice. And when it came to the distance between that first business and getting to what we could call like the first sort of success, how long was that period? Was it like three or four different ventures or what did that look like?
Yeah, actually, our first business we did very well.
Nice.
So, which kind of sucks in some ways because I guess I've been trying to duplicate that. Again, it was a service related business during a really great time. I was working with all my friends. I mean, there was just so many. I'm in my early 20s. I'm single. I'm in the city. It just every possible scenario of goodness sort of hit its stride. So yeah, I was really lucky and fortunate to do well early.
Nice, nice. So let's talk a little bit about there was multiple sort of exit scenarios over your career. I know that you'd sold interest in certain ventures and things like that, but let's talk about the acquisition that you took your company through. Which company was that, and when was that?
Well, if you're considering, selling off selling off the assets as far as Fitmark, which is our previous company, we did just that. In companies prior to that, I had, as you had noted, I had either just moved on, or I had sold my interest in the companies that I had founded. So. Fitmark was a what we consider a sport bag manufacturing company. It was focused on the health and wellness community. And our main line within the bags were what we consider meal management bags, which is a line of sport bags that had meal management components to them. And it was a previous venture that I had started prior to that. We had almost built that category. So we had been running that company for Fitmark for 5 or 6 years. And at the end of it, we needed to sell because we really had no other options but to look for an opportunity to sell, and we were able to do that and move into what we're doing now.
Nice, very nice. So, what were the types of KPIs that you were tracking? Was it mainly just revenue? Was it, cost of acquisition? What defines success?
We define success in that particular company.
Yeah.
Well, it's just scale. I mean, you have multiple components, right? You want to grow the business, so it's your top line revenue is always important. In manufacturing of bags, you can usually identify your margin fairly simple, and then you're just looking at how you're operating the company, right, through all your G&A and the like. So we were always what I consider fairly skinny when it came to G&A. At the end of the day, there came a point where the overall market and what we were doing was not looking to help us grow.
Mhm.
If we did want to, as in many companies, we would have had to throw a lot more money at building the business, at building the brand, at building the pipeline. And we were just not prepared to do that. So we were just at that point looking at getting out while we could.
Got it. And how did those initial conversations begin? Was it a customer? Was it a partner? What did that
Yeah,
look like?
it was an existing partner, and a lot of times it works out that way. It was a manufacturer that we were using that came to the plate, and a lot of people who are in that business, a lot of people are in all types of consumer businesses, consumer product businesses. If your manufacturer is somewhat aligned with what you're doing in any way, in any whether it's they own brands or whether or not they want to own brands, and they want to keep your pipeline going, as in the business that you're feeding them. There's often an exit opportunity that lies there. It just depends on what that looks like.
Interesting. That's really cool. Like, since they're manufacturing the goods, they can kind of just own that pipeline and kind of have it as an acquisition channel for them long term. I like that route. So, how big was the team at the time of the acquisition?
Oh, small. We had 4 people, 5 people.
Oh wow, okay, cool. So really lean team. And then did you shop it around at all, or was it just straight to the manufacturer?
No,
Kind of.
this was an easy path for us. This is what we were looking to move on and move into what we're doing now. Again, because we had become so flat with the business,
Mm,
it was not going to be one of those. It was not going to be one of those opportunities that we were going to be able to shop to multiple people.
mhm.
Somebody would have had to really understand the business, understand it right away, and recognize that if we didn't go this route, there wasn't going to be too many other options on the table.
Yeah, yeah. And they definitely understood as the manufacturer, like exactly the volumes and everything like that. That's really
Oh,
interesting.
for
So,
sure. Again, it's a really good point to anybody who listens. A lot of times that happens. It's just not really public, or maybe people don't know the intricacies of how deals work. But it doesn't matter if you're making bags or you're making snacks. You're providing business to another entity, and that entity is often making good money from your business. So if you were to, just for theory, if you were to turn the lights off, right, they're losing out on all of that business, or the business that would be coming down the pipeline for however long. So if they felt like the brand and or the products had staying power, and you could convince them of how that would have staying power with very few people operating it, or maybe their own team operating it because of the pipeline you built, you often have a story to sell right there.
yeah, yeah, and that's a great segue into like the team itself. Was there any kind of earn out structure where you guys had to go over to the manufacturer, or it was just clean cut on to the next?
Clean cut, moved on. Yeah,
Nice,
clean cut,
very
moved on. But
nice.
again, it's a good point. There's 100 ways to cut things like this, right? And oftentimes, if there's especially if there's a founder, right, who knows where all the levers are, they have to stay on sometimes, right?
Yeah,
And that's how the deals are worked. But every deal is different, as you know, and again, there's 100 ways to cut it.
yeah, and I like the concept that the more valuable the business is the less valuable you are to it as the founder. And I really like that sort of mindset shift that a lot of people really resonate with, because that can scale, and especially with like a manufacturer that could take over, roll the brand up into their portfolio and just keep it running. The less like levers, as you described them, are the better for
Yeah,
them.
it's interesting, and what we do now, like with our snack company. I mean, a lot of people know me for the, oh, I know Mark. I won, okay. And when you're early in it, you got a lot of interest in that. You want to build almost a personal brand and then your consumer brand, and you like to tie them together. Especially people know I'm in the health and wellness, so it helps. But at the end of the day, there's an ego aspect to it, right? We want to be known, but you really don't. You don't really want to have something tied to the brand and its value, because later on, like what you're describing, you should have the ability to walk away and nobody would even know, nor
Right.
would anybody care. That's when you know you've built a valuable asset, right? And so I think founders, especially younger ones, have a different way of looking at that. And they should recognize that you want to build the brand so it stands on its own, so
Mhm.
that you can sell it to anyone, Jimmy or Susie. And Jimmy and Susie could just run with it and wouldn't skip a beat. There's no doubt that you have value to it in helping the transition. There's no doubt that know where all the levers are, so you might have to stay on for quite some time, but you really want to have the ability to disconnect from that.
Hmm. Well said. So, for young entrepreneurs out there listening to you, that maybe they have a product that they're trying to sell, what types of advice could you give them on being prepared? Because we talked a little bit about disconnecting yourself from the business. What type of knowledge could you share around how to prepare a business for an exit like it?
Yeah, I don't know about being prepared per se. A few things jump at me, especially because even for the company we're in right now, we're looking. at different opportunities. Number one is you want to have all of your ducks in a row as far as your financials, and we a lot of people call them data rooms. It's like you don't realize, like with corporate governance and or your financials, at some point somebody's going to be like, hey, send me everything, and you really don't want to be running backwards, because you're not only trying to keep your business afloat, while you're trying to go through these processes, which by the way can take forever. You just want to have a place where everything is, so that you again aren't working on this double time. So again, keep all your corporate governance in a location, keep all your financials in a location, and then just be prepared to lift rocks. I mean, that's what I call it. So there's an element of just being extremely resilient, and extremely uh, I was going to use the term aggressive, but in terms of aggressive, about looking at different opportunities, and looking at all opportunities that you possibly can, and dwindling them down to the core ones, the ones that are absolutely making sense at the time, and not having to deal with things that just either feel a little off to you, or aren't going to make sense for the business.
Hmm. Makes sense. So, how about timing? I think that's probably the number one question out of all questions is why is it the right time? And every business is different. But for you, you mentioned that the company was, you had only, that really felt like your only option. But what could you share around timing?
Yeah, well, it all depends. I mean, so for I don't as far as past episodes, it could be somebody who had a major exit, and it's because, oh, we built this really valuable asset, and we had all these suitors sitting in front of us, and that's on one scale. If you go all the way to the other side, where you need to sell the business, um, timing timing is timing is not on your side, right? So you just got to be extremely, like I said, you got to be really diligent, and you have to prepare yourself to move as quickly as possible to find great opportunities, and some again are going to turn around in weeks potentially, depending on how, again, if you have all your stuff together and you need to unload the asset and or business, all the way to, as you probably know, it could take a year to get a deal done. And so it just depends on which situation you're in, and what the business is looking like at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've also found that chapters of people's lives, if some people are just getting started in business, other people are trying to kind of cool down a little bit and relax. And if those are co-founders, you have a totally different perspective as to like a motivation to sell. There's a lot of ingredients that go into timing for sure. So, knowing what you know now, what would you tell Mark 10 years ago?
Oh, that's always the question, right? I would not tell Mark anything. Is what I always say. I'm
Yeah.
not a real believer in any of that. About people should recognize that the most valuable asset you have is going through all of this. There is nothing that you would want to be explained or taught earlier, because you will never get the same education as being punched square in your face through the dealings that you deal with when operating a business. So I'm not a believer in trying to go backwards in life. Again, the stuff that I have in my back pocket, this is for early folks or those that are 40 or 50 or 60. Like, I'm 44 years old. I've done a few different things. I've been blessed to wake up this morning, right, and get another crack at it today. I would say that through my 20 years of dealings, the amount of assets that I have in my back pocket is invaluable. There is nothing that I could have told myself that's going to be anywhere in the realm of value of actually going through it. So it's wildly important that people understand that, and recognize doing is the most valuable thing you can do.
Well said. Well said. Like school of hard knocks, right? Like learning everything on the job is the way to do it, and it's really the only way. It's
For
like what.
sure. I mean, because you think about it, those that are in getting a master's degree, which is great, right? You see it all the time. And again, I think you're probably in tech or something, right? Like, you got buddies, they're going to, and I'm all for it. I don't get in that debate. Like, you should go get your master, you should get an MBA. I don't really care what you do, but I will tell you this: There's nothing you could read in that book. I don't care which school you go to USC or whatever. There's nothing you could read in there that's going to prepare you for what's about to happen. You are going to get squarely knocked in your fucking face so many times that the that what you just read over and over the 2 years, 4 years, 19 years you wanted to spend, doing your thing and have an amazing professor, they will never prepare you for what's about to happen. So there's my take on it.
Well said. Well, shifting gears after that exit happened, let's talk about what you're doing now and what stage you're at.
So we started a snack company about 7 years ago. It's called I Win Organics. We make plant-based salty snacks. We're what we consider legume-based. So our snacks have peas and or beans in them. So we're a little higher in protein and fiber than other snacks in the category. And so we've had a wild ride. And we've been lucky. It's almost been to the up and to the right over the last 5 years. And then of course we had a flat year, unfortunately, because of capital constraints. So we're in a really, really tough market as in everybody is, and dealing with new things. Again, this is just through dealings. You got to go through it to understand. Um, and so with capital constraints, it really puts a halt on what you can do as far as pushing sales. So we're currently looking around at different opportunities, partnerships, mergers and acquisitions. The capital raise side kind of comes into play with stuff like that. So that's what we're doing right now. It's taking up a lot of my time while keeping us afloat and making sure that we maintain the business that we have.
Yeah, it's always a struggle for founders when it comes to figuring out this next stage of raising money while keeping the ship afloat is literally like two full-time jobs, literally just like two completely separate, wildly different jobs that you have to step into and manage. And how big is the team at I1?
We're small, so we did this. We had to do the same thing. So there's still five of us, but again, we kept a very lean team even while we were building this, and that's what I'm used to. So we were lucky, unlike a lot of uh, consumer goods companies in our space and food and beverage, where we didn't do the build and then cut based on what was happening in the market. We always were very lean, which again we were lucky. So in our business, if you don't know much about it, you could still be doing millions of dollars in sales and have a really really small um, team, as long as you're able to figure out who's playing what position and how you're able to again go back and pull levers where you need to.
Yeah. Yeah. So right now you guys are just sort of looking towards the next stage, kind of capital constrained. There are some previous episodes on the pod for anybody listening that has questions around capital. A lot of previous episodes about it and people that have come on, VCs and things like that to talk. But I'm curious as to, what's next for you guys? What do you think the next 12, 24 months looks like for I1?
I think we're going to find a partner in some way. It just has to be one that makes the most sense. And with that partner, they'll provide the capital resources that we're going to need and allow us to kind of continue on the journey that we are already on. Because we're very lucky. We have an amazing product, and we've built somewhat of a solid distribution network already. So we're small compared to many, but we have a fairly robust distribution network as far as where we're at in our journey. So I believe that we'll find something that's going to allow us to continue to build, and that's what I want to do. And so it would be more about what happens over the next 3 years. I think over 36 months, if we can do what we think we're going to do, we'll be a fairly sizable company and competing well in the salty snack category.
Nice. Very nice. And are you guys like, what does distribution look like right now? Is it retail? Is it mainly online? What's that look like?
Yeah, we're 80% wholesale. So we're in, five regions of Whole Foods. We're in Sprouts nationally, Vitamin Shop nationally. Um, I know you were in California. We're in a lot of the major regional players, throughout the country. Wegmans up in the Northeast, and then online, we mainly focus on Amazon. So we have a good decent business there, direct to consumer,
Mhm.
because we just have a loyal customer base, and so we're just going to keep feeding that, and then we'll grow distribution with the right partners once we can unlock a little bit of the capital.
Nice. Very nice. Well, those are all the questions I have. Where can people learn more about iWan?
Sure, they can go to i1organics.com. They can find me on LinkedIn, which is where I hang out the most. And that's that.
Right on, right on. Well, wherever you guys are listening on iTunes or Spotify, all the links that Mark mentioned will be in the show notes. But thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story.
Thank you, sir.